hours of July 31st, Foxworth repeatedly shot into the Shell gas station on Terrell Boulevard in Jonesboro as people were both inside and sitting out by the business.
Said Mr. Foxworth, who is white, is motivated to shoot the people inside of the stores because of their perceived race, color, or national origin.
While Clayton County Police responded to this gas station for reports of a shooting, officers heard more shots coming from just down the street at this gas station on Mount Zion Road. Both stores are located near Foxworth's home.
Both stores were open for business and occupied at the time of the shooting.
Investigators say Foxworth was driving with an open alcohol container in his car, and they spotted him weaving in and out of traffic. During a traffic stop, police say officers found a bag of ammunition, including spent shell casings, inside the car. As he was taken into custody, police tell us he told officers he didn't like people of color and that it was a hate crime and a targeted hit.
Can spread across a person's body.
The baby formula shortage showing no signs.
Food banks feeling the pinch, just as consumers who are going to supermarkets and stores and retailers and looking at the shelves to purchase baby formula, we are doing the same thing, and the product is not there.
Unfortunately, there's no clear timeline on when to expect more formula back on the shelves.
The GOP Senate primary in Pennsylvania is still too close to call. Heart surgeon turned TV celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz and former hedge fund CEO David McCormick are neck and neck. Some counties have yet to tabulate Election Day and mail-in ballots in the presidential battleground state. Counting of provisional, overseas, and military absentee ballots could go on past Friday. The race remains close enough to trigger Pennsylvania's automatic recount law. Oz has been helped by an endorsement from former President Donald Trump.
I think that thinking still exists. That has been a consistent notion across Republican and Democrat administrations, that really China is the key. And it is true that China is a lifeline for North Korea. But the Chinese have, with one exception, have never demonstrated the willingness to put sufficient pressure on Pyongyang in order to get it to end its nuclear weapons program. China has other issues. Okay, they have other priorities. And the non-proliferation priority does not rank in the top 3 or 4 or even 10, I would argue, for Beijing.
Yeah. Actually, to the contrary, it seems to me, there's a profound interest on their part to having this bad boy that is essentially available for them to torment the South, the Japanese, the United States, and others. The more so if it's nuclear armed. And so while we might think they have an interest in not having, a rogue state on their borders with these nuclear weapons, they seem to have acclimated to the thing, and I guess have the feeling that they can actually exercise control over it. Is that right?
Well, I don't know that they think they have control over that. And North Korea has demonstrated its willingness in the past to reject Chinese pressure on their nuclear program. And you go back to 2006 with the first nuclear test. I'm convinced that the Chinese did not want them to do that, and yet they did. And it was at that time that the Chinese joined Security Council resolutions to put real sanctions on North Korea.
That's the exception
That's the exception that I mentioned.
proves the rule.
But it U.S. intelligence officers through British intelligence, stating that they wanted to clear the air about weapons of mass destruction programs, and particularly a nuclear program in Libya.
Before we do that, something else had happened a month or two before, as I recall, did it not, in a country called Iraq? And did that have something to do with the calculations
in
of
March of in March of 2003, we were building our forces up in the region.
Preparing.
Okay, we were flowing hundreds of thousands of troops to the Gulf, and that certainly
concentrated his mind.
Gaddafi's mind, absolutely. And the one constant theme in working through sort of the Libyan negotiations was Gaddafi not wanting to be Saddam Hussein.
Boy, this is like gigantic, all right? Give me give me 2 hours alone and I'll get this in my butt, you know?
Some hosts directly promoted the toys to minors, telling educators there's no age limit. One of the speakers was a doctor who's focused on gender transitioning. He reportedly talked about performing thousands of transitioning surgeries. In this clip, he talks about the ages of his clients.
I do not have a minimum age of any sort in my practice. There's no chronological age that says you don't get surgery. Now, having said that, I don't think I've ever done a consult on a 12-year-old yet, but we would if one came our way. We just haven't had reason to.
Two other hosts, who identify as trans, showcased how to engage in role-play activities.
I haven't gotten to explore a lot of my mommy kink, and I think for tonight, I'm really wanting to feel cared for, but also get punished a little bit.
Rufo reported that the event was organized by the Mazzoni Center. The center reportedly received
a new piece to the immigration puzzle. U.S. Border Patrol has started to use a special parole exception to allow tens of thousands of illegal immigrants to stay in the United States for at least a year. That's according to Epoch Times reporter Charlotte Cuthbertson. It allows overwhelmed Border Patrol stations to process illegal aliens much faster. In the past, it was rarely used, but now it's being used on a mass scale. Under the new parole category, this fiscal year, CBP has mass released more than 120,000 illegal aliens. They're given a trackable cell phone or sometimes an ankle bracelet to check in with the agency on a regular basis. If they don't report within a year, they can be removed. Retired immigration judge Andrew Arthur.
The Anaheim Chamber of Commerce was charged with making false statements to a financial institution. 57-year-old Todd Ament was scheduled to appear in a Santa Ana federal court on Tuesday. He allegedly lied to a mortgage lender about his assets when he tried to secure a home loan in late 2020. The loan was for the purchase of a $1.5 million home in Southern California's San Bernardino Mountains. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, a 99-page criminal complaint along with an affidavit was filed against Ament. The affidavit outlined how Ament, with the help of a political consultant friend, laundered more than $200,000 of Chambers proceeds. Ament and the unnamed consultant additionally led a small group of Anaheim public officials, consultants, and business leaders to exert influence over city government operations. According to court filings, Ament described the group as a cabal. On Monday, the FBI also announced it was investigating the mayor of Anaheim, Harry Sidhu, for corruption charges. According to FBI agent Brian Adkins in an affidavit, the FBI learned that the city of Anaheim was tightly controlled by a small cadre of individuals, to include Sidhu, a particular member of the Anaheim Chamber of Commerce, and others. The FBI did not explicitly name Sidhu and Ament together. Ament could face a sentence up to 30 years in federal prison.
Critic of Beijing. Mark Ruskin is a 27-year FBI veteran and author of The Pretender, My Life Undercover for the FBI.
You know, if an individual is acting as a foreign agent for a foreign entity, I mean, and again, the entity can be in various different forms, and is concealing the relationship, then, you know, then it can be a serious issue.
The Justice Department is pursuing a civil lawsuit against Wynn under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA. How would registering as a foreign agent of China impact Wynn?
It may impact his negotiating position. It may impact his relationships internationally with other countries where he may have financial relationships or ongoing business interests where there is a more adversarial relationship perhaps with China, and it may impact in those relationships.
The DOJ says the reason Wynn was helping Beijing is because he had business interests in China. His Wynn Resorts operates a luxury
organized crime, but the people responsible are rarely punished. Family members left behind say that the Mexican government isn't doing enough to find their loved ones, calling them indifferent when they get reports of missing people. Advocacy groups are calling for action and urging officials to make this a priority. Russia's defense ministry says more. Kyiv is remaining silent about the surrendered soldiers' fate. In a highly symbolic trial, a Russian soldier pleaded guilty to killing an elderly Ukrainian civilian. And TD's Eddie Aitken has more.
Russia said on Wednesday that nearly 1,000 Ukrainian fighters, including 80 wounded, had surrendered from the bunkers and tunnels below the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol since Monday. The defense ministry said nearly 700 Ukrainian fighters, including members of the Azov regiment, had surrendered in the past 24 hours, including 29 wounded. The leader of the Russian-backed separatist region of Donetsk, Denis Pushilin, said top-ranking Ukrainian commanders have not yet surrendered from the Azovstal steelworks. Pushilin said the fate of the surrendered Ukrainian fighters would be decided by the courts. He was quoted by a local media saying, "If it's a Nazi criminal, then it's a tribunal." Kiev was silent about the surrendered soldiers' fate, having spoken of hopes to arrange a prisoner swap. Ukrainian officials described them as national heroes, while Moscow said no such deal was made for fighters called Nazis. Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak said there was still hope to get the soldiers freed.
Regarding a war prisoners exchange, including
and then furthermore, I think his legacy has really transcended in the 90s, whether it be in television, pop culture, and so we see these items, especially items that are signed and worn by him, to be highly collectible.
Leading the sale is a signed Upper Deck Fleer card from 1986, the first basketball card to be sold at Christie's. Donovan called it the unicorn of the card collecting community. This card alone could potentially sell for $2 to $3 million. Donovan also noted that interest in Jordan took off during the pandemic. That's when ESPN aired The Last Dance, a documentary about the Bulls' last championship run.
I think that during that time when we were all stuck indoors and feeling kind of, not so optimistic, we saw this person who really led a team to something that was almost inconceivable, 6 national championships. And so I really think everyone kind of it reinvigorated everyone's love for Michael Jordan. And so I think we've seen the items that we're selling kind of follow that.